Reporters are shouting from every direction, begging for just one word. They're hounding him with questions about soloing A-class gates. One reporter asks if he manipulated his awakening tear to hide his true power. Jim stares back, stoic while cameras flash incessantly in his face. To the world, he's a hero, but in his head, he knows he's a complete fraud. Someone asks about his future plans, thinking his rise will make the world safer. He doesn't even know what they're talking about half the time. Plans? He wouldn't be in this mess if he actually had a plan. The thought of everyone finding out he's just an F-ranker is terrifying. He takes a hard gulp, trying to keep his cool. If the truth comes out, the S-rank hunters he was credited with beating would hunt him down. He'd be cursed and probably killed for the embarrassment he's caused. The stress is literally making him want to tear his hair out. On a crowded bus, people are already watching the live broadcast of his interview. He gives a flat, no comment to the cameras. The chat section explodes, calling him a clown and a total nut job. More questions fly, asking if he's admitting to lying about his awakening tear. They demand to know if he has anything to say to the Hunters Association. One reporter literally screams at him to give him a response. Jim just looks down, the pressure finally reaching its breaking point. He grips the edge of the podium, his knuckles turning white. It doesn't even matter what the news says tomorrow. He knows he's finished. He clenches his fist tight. He figures he might as well let them think whatever they want. His grip tightens, even more as his patience finally snaps. Jim looks up with cold eyes and calls them all primitive mammals. The reporters are stunned into silence by the sudden insult. Then they erupt again, screaming for him to explain what he means. They're baffled, repeating the word mammals back at him. Jim remains silent, done with the whole charade. Whether they find out he's hiding power or realize he's a low-rank nobody, it's over. He looks back at his life, wondering where it all started to fall apart. To find the answer, he has to go back to his very first resignation. The big secret is that he wasn't even born on this planet. He comes from a place called Alpha Uri. It was a world where magic and civilization reached heights humans couldn't dream of. Back then, Jim wasn't a human. He was a green, three-eyed, gelatinous creature. As a high wizard, he was vital to society, but he only had one thought. He needed to quit. He worked 640 days a year with 0 vacations or weekends. He even saw a doctor who diagnosed him with a serious case of overtime addiction. He couldn't even remember the last time he finished work and went home on time. So, the only question that mattered was, how do I quit? Jim was so vital to the system that the higher-ups would never let him just walk away. They even had restraint spells in place that would fry his brain if he even tried to teleport out of there. There was literally nowhere to hide, as giant floating eyes, known as the rulers, watched every single corner of the planet. For a second, he actually considers just killing them all, but his conscience and the laws of the world stop him. He realizes that a direct confrontation is simply impossible. The magic of the world makes it so he can't harm anyone, himself included, meaning suicide isn't even an option. While he's wallowing in despair, he accidentally drops his blade. That's when a light bulb goes off. The rulers can lock down his physical body with magic, but they can't touch his soul. If he can just separate the two, he might actually have a shot at freedom. He realizes that his soul might be the only thing capable of escaping this prison. He starts testing the theory, trying to tug his essence out of his physical form. He feels a massive jolt as he pushes himself to the limit. He goes through a whole cycle of doubt and determination, but eventually, his mind is made up. He's going to resign, one way or another. After a mountain of failed attempts, he finally perfects a brand new type of magic. A massive burst of light erupts as he activates the spell. A giant magic circle forms in a void of space, pulsing with insane amounts of energy. Suddenly, his glowing soul starts to peel away from his green, gelatinous body. He actually did it. The detachment is a complete success. He looks back at one of the rulers and realizes they can't do a thing to stop him now. He shouts a final goodbye to the suckers and leaves that shithole of a planet behind for good. His soul shoots across the universe like a meteor, heading straight for Earth. Just like that, he becomes the first entity in history to pull off a successful soul transmigration. Back in the present, Jim looks completely drained, probably wishing he could pull off another resignation right about now. A massive bird monster screeches in the middle of the city, its red feathers looking more like a warning sign than anything else. Jim watches with a blank stare, thinking about how casually someone can run into a disaster on this crappy planet. But then he has a thought. Maybe there's an upside to this mess. He remembers from his host's memories that humans eat birds, and suddenly, that monster looks like lunch. The creature clicks its beak, completely unaware it's being sized up for dinner. Jim figures if he can just adapt to the local magic flow, he'll be more than fine. He locks eyes with the beast, looking way more stoic than a starving guy has any right to be. The creature is massive, towering over the alleyway as blue energy flickers through the air. Jim takes a step forward, a faint blue glow swirling around his shoes as he tries to tap into the world's power. It's overwhelming. The mana here is dense, like standing at the bottom of a deep blue ocean. He narrows his eyes, focusing every bit of his wizardly will to control the flow. The sun beats down on the city, making the transition to this bright, dry atmosphere even harder. He can feel the solid ground beneath him, which is at least one thing that feels normal. But there's a problem. His stomach is screaming at him, and his human form looks ready to collapse. He scans the urban landscape, looking for anything that might pass as a snack. It's just concrete and steel for miles, and there isn't a single thing to eat in sight. He glares at the smiling sun, frustrated that a high wizard is being defeated by a clear sky. He hunches over, sweat dripping down his face as he realizes the previous owner of this body actually starved to death. He lets out a miserable groan, his body feeling like it's literally falling apart from the inside. Everything starts to fade to white as his vision begins to fail him. He can barely keep his eyes open, the world around him blurring into a mess of light and shadow. His hand twitches on the cold ground, the last bit of energy leaving his fingers. He remembers waking up in this cramped apartment, staring at the ceiling after his soul first landed on Earth. He had reached up, trying to grasp the reality of his new life in a human shell. It was a weird transition, going from a legendary wizard to a guy who looks like he needs a long nap. Back on Alpha Yuri, he was just a green blob with eyes. Now he's got way too many limbs to manage. He sits up on his mat, trying to figure out why he's stuck in such a pathetic, weakened state. He catches his reflection, his red eyes glowing with the faint remains of his original power. Transmigrating was supposed to bring over everything, but his host's memories are a complete mess of static. Back in the present, the bird monster lunges its target a kid who happened to be in the wrong place. The boy falls back in terror, the giant beak snapping shut inches from his face. He scrambles across the asphalt, desperately trying to put some distance between him and the predator. The monster towers over him, its massive legs casting a shadow that covers the entire street. It slams into a parked car, crushing the hood while the kid narrowly avoids the debris. The boy screams for help, clutching a bottle of orange juice like it's his last possession. Jim watches from a distance, wondering if that creature is actually considered a bird. He should know how to handle this, but the memories of this body are still locked away. It's like a black ink has been poured over all of his host's past experiences, leaving him blind. Suddenly, a violent cough racks his lungs, and he feels something warm and metallic in his mouth. He doubles over, clutching his stomach as a searing pain tears through his abdomen. He grits his teeth and curses, wondering which part of this fragile body is deciding to break down now. He sees flashes of his host's life, but they're dissolving into darkness before he can make any sense of them. Jim realizes with horror that the host body he chose wasn't just hungry, it was a literal starved corpse. He thinks back to the complex conditions he set before launching the transmigration spell. Rule number 1 was to reincarnate as the most magically potent species on the planet, assuming that meant the most intelligent ones too. But right now, he can barely keep his eyes open, much less cast a high-level spell. His gaze falls on a cockroach scuttling across the pavement, and he's starting to get desperate. He's so hungry, he actually considers eating the bug, opening his mouth in a pathetic attempt to survive. A pair of small feet walk past his hunched-over form in the alleyway. It's a young boy, completely oblivious to the starving wizard drooling on the ground behind him. The kid happily slurps on a bottle of orange juice, unaware of how much of a target he is. Jim watches every drop, his predatory instincts clashing with his remaining dignity. He's torn between his wizardly pride and the basic need to take that drink for himself. He remains frozen in the dark alley as the kid continues on his way. Jim leans against a wall, right next to a police poster about reporting suspicious people. He watches the boy walk further away, his stomach knotting in pain. The kid senses someone watching and glances back nervously. He sees Jim's pale, sweat-streaked face and wide eyes, looking like a total creep to anyone passing by. The kid doesn't wait around and bolts, leaving Jim standing there alone. Left with nothing, Jim turns his attention to a nearby planter filled with pink flowers. They're clearly labeled as ornamental, but to a starving alien, they look like a feast. He grabs a handful and starts stuffing them into his mouth like they're gourmet herbs. He doesn't even care about the taste as he chews through the petals. He stands there, flower juice dripping down his chin, looking completely unhinged. The sudden rush of whatever nutrients are in those flowers makes his head spin. A sharp scream pierces the air, and Jim's focus snaps back to the kid who just ran off. He falls to his knees, frustrated that he overlooked such a basic detail as the host's physical health. Every movement is agony, his body protesting against the sudden exertion. He can't even tap into his own mana right after arriving, leaving him effectively powerless. He realizes he needs time to synchronize his soul with the magic of this specific planet. But survival comes first. He needs to get more fuel in his system immediately. He pushes himself toward a bright light at the end of the alley. He narrows his eyes, focusing on the source of the commotion. He remembers his homeland, a liquid world where starlight barely reached the depths. Back in the present, the boy is paralyzed with fear, his juice bottle shaking in his hand. A massive giant red, avian monster towers over the child, its presence filling the street with dread. The beast exhales a hot, steamy breath, its blue eyes locked onto its prey. It lets out a piercing screech that rattles the nearby windows. The monster lunges, its massive weight shattering the pavement as the boy screams. It opens its beak, revealing rows of sharp teeth and a prehensile tongue dripping with saliva. Suddenly, Jim senses something he hasn't felt since arriving: magic. Pure blue energy erupts around him, lifting his hair and mending his broken state. It's a weird sensation, like every cell in his body is being scanned by the planet itself. He looks up, his eyes glowing with a cold, blue light as he finally connects to Earth's magic. Jim collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of mana flooding his senses. It's more than he ever imagined. He compares his previous world's magic to a single bucket of water, a tiny fraction of the power available here. To his original form, this planet is like an endless, sparkling ocean of energy just waiting to be tapped. He can't help but shout for joy at his luck, realizing that Earth is a literal jackpot for a magic user like him. Jim closes his eyes and smiles, imagining a future where he's invincible thanks to this planet's incredible mana density. His daydream is shattered by a desperate cry for help from the boy he saw earlier. The child is paralyzed with fear, calling out for anyone to save him from the beast. Jim's expression shifts to a cold, focused stare as he realizes the immediate danger the kid is in. Despite the threat, he manages a small, confident chuckle as he adjusts his posture. He finds it almost ironic that he's being forced into action so soon after his arrival on this strange new world. He prepares to launch a counterattack, expecting a glorious explosion to follow his command. He confidently tries to cast explosive magic, but only a tiny, pathetic puff of smoke emerges from his fingertips. He quickly pivots, attempting to summon water magic instead, but that also fails to manifest. Frustrated, he tries a standard spell incantation, only to be met with another embarrassing silence. He starts to panic, wondering how he can't even cast a simple curse when surrounded by so much mana. Beads of sweat roll down his neck as the reality of his current weakness begins to sink in. He stares blankly at the street, his mind racing as he questions why none of his magic is working. He facepalms in disbelief, realizing his synchronization with Earth's magic is far from complete. He reflects on how a lesser alien would be completely doomed if they weren't a legendary mage like himself. Turning back to the boy, he demands the juice bottle, his hunger still overriding the danger for a moment. The giant red avian monster looms directly behind the child, its mouth agape and ready to strike. Terrified by the monster, the boy drops everything and tries to scramble away in tears. Jim watches him go, thinking about how foolish it is to turn one's back on a predator. He narrows his eyes, his pride as an Archmage finally taking priority over his stomach. He steps forward and holds out his arm, sternly ordering the boy to stand back. A vision of his original form and a massive magic circle appear, representing his true status as a planet-guarding Archmage. He reaches out toward the monster, boasting that he can separate its bones and flesh with a mere gesture. He assumes a grand, casting stance in front of the boy, waiting for the devastating magic to manifest. A massive redbird monster is tearing through the city like a runaway train. Jim is running for his life, weaving through the traffic. He finally makes it to the main road, but the monster is still right on his tail. He's starving and out of breath, wondering why this thing is only targeting him. He's panting hard, reaching his physical limit. He needs to change direction fast before he collapses. A massive crash shakes the ground as the beast slams into the pavement. It hits with enough force to shatter the concrete. The monster's head is buried deep in a wall, its body limp. Jim just stands there stunned. Sung Woo-yeon arrives on the scene, completely frozen by what she sees. The little boy is frantic, shouting for the police to hurry and help the man who's in trouble. Sun Woo-yun picks up the pace, determined not to be too late. She confirms the location with the officer as they rush toward the chaos. She stops the kid, telling him to stay back for his own safety. This creature is known as a beginner killer, a bird monster usually found in desert gates. It's typically an E-rank threat that regular guns can handle. But this one spiked to C rank, gaining the speed of a guided missile. Sun Woo-yun knows anyone below C rank is toast if they get in its way. She spots the carcass and realizes someone is already standing over it. The slime-like ruler watches from the sidelines, looking oddly pleased with the situation. Instead of a heroic pose, Jim is just casually eating the kid's tangerine bread. He's so hungry, he doesn't even care how it looks. Sun Woo-yun introduces herself as an investigator from the Hunter Association. She reaches out for a handshake, only to realize Jim's hand is covered in sticky bread residue. She awkwardly wipes her hand while asking for his Hunter ID to file a report. Jim just keeps chewing, leaving her completely baffled. He plays it cool and bluffs, claiming he left his license at home. Since he doesn't have it, she decides to just look up his records later. And she asks for the one thing he definitely doesn't know, his name. He panics internally. He has no idea who this guy is. Sun Woo-yun waits, her suspicion growing by the second. She's analyzing his every move, trying to figure out who this mysterious master is. The silence stretches out as she waits for an answer. To her, he looks like a seasoned pro who just took down a high-level threat without breaking sweat. She can't believe he managed to kill a C-rank monster all by himself. Another officer runs up, asking Sun Woo-yun for a status report. The boy cheers, calling Jim uncle, and happy to see the police finally made it. The officer bows, thanking Jim for taking care of the threat before anyone got hurt. He explains they rushed over as soon as they got the report. Jim just stares back, still processing his accidental victory. Even the ruler has no idea what's going on, while Jim tries to play off his memory loss. The officer is blown away by how fast he worked, while Sun Woo-yun stays skeptical. Jim skids across the pavement, barely staying on his feet. A violent impact sends debris flying everywhere. The red bird monster loses control, tumbling through the air. It slams face first into the concrete with a bone-shattering thud. Jim hunches over, his head ringing from the proximity of the crash. He's completely drained, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Sun Woo-yun arrives, taking in the aftermath with a professional gaze. She knows these bird monsters usually live in desert gates where the sand is thick. In the city, the solid ground makes them lethal, unless you can trick them into crashing. She inspects the carcass, concluding that whoever did this used the monster's own momentum against it. She looks at Jim, wondering if this disheveled man is really the elite hunter responsible. Jim is still in a daze when the little boy points him out to the investigator. The kid is still shaking, clutching his juice bottle while looking at his savior. Jim doesn't hesitate. He reaches out and takes the drink. He chugs the juice like his life depends on it, which it probably does. A wave of relief washes over him as the sugar hits his system. Back in his old world, he had a body that didn't even need to eat. But here, a lack of calories almost got him killed by this massive beast. Just minutes ago, he was sprinting through the middle of traffic with a monster right on his tail. Drivers were slamming on their brakes, swearing at the guy darting between cars. It was total chaos in the intersection as he desperately tried to lose the bird. One guy leaned out his window, screaming at Jim for being a suicidal brat. Jim ignored him, knowing the monster would never stop until it caught him. The beast's massive talons tore up the asphalt just inches from swerving car. The beginner killer let out a piercing screech, closing the gap fast. Jim tripped and went sliding, looking back in horror at the approaching predator. That's when it happened. The monster missed its mark and hit the wall instead. Jim stood over the corpse, still trying to process his accidental victory. Its beak was wedged deep into the concrete, ending the threat instantly. The slime-like ruler appeared by his side, just as confused as he was. Suddenly, Jim's stomach lets out a loud growl that echoes through the street. He looks at the dead bird and starts wondering if the meat is edible. He gives a hard gulp, his hunger overriding any sense of disgust. He tries to look serious, but all he can think about is his empty stomach. Sun Woo-yun is still watching him, her eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. She looks up at the sky, picturing how the beast must have looked in flight. Jim remembers looking up and seeing the monster hovering over the city. It folded its wings and dove straight at him like a feathered missile. He took off again, his legs feeling like lead as he pushed himself to the limit. At that moment, he was certain he was about to become bird food. A sharp pain flared in his chest, making him gasp for air. He started to wonder if this new body had some kind of hidden disability. The beginner killer screeches as it dives, its mouth wide open and tongue lashing. It misses Jim by a hair, crashing violently into the pavement behind him. Jim collapses to his knees, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looks up, gasping for air that won't seem to reach his lungs. Internally, he sees the damage. His lungs are dark and clogged, a stark contrast to his mana circles. He spots a discarded pack of cigarettes nearby and realizes why his magic hasn't been activated. The realization hits him like a physical blow, leaving him stunned on the ground. The ruler looms over him, its multiple eyes glowing as it watches its master struggle. Sun Wei-yun marches up to him, her patience clearly at its end. "Hey, are you even listening to me?" she screams, her face flushed with anger. Jim just stares at her blankly, too exhausted to process her yelling. In the background, a starstruck boy snaps selfies with a confused police officer. Jim looks at the juice bottle in his hand, wondering how he ended up in such a pathetic state. Sun Wei-yun stops mid-shout, her expression shifting to one of genuine concern. Without a word, Jim turns and starts walking away, his movements stiff and weary. He leaves the chaos behind, the investigator and the cops watching him disappear into the city. Later, back in the safety of a cramped apartment, the reality of his situation sinks in. The small kitchen is a mess, filled with the remnants of a life he never lived. He pulls out a wallet and finds a government-issued identification card. He stares at the name on the card. Kim Ji-ryo, the man whose body he now inhabits. He stands in the middle of the cluttered room, feeling like a stranger in his own skin. His gaze falls on an overflowing ashtray and a half-empty pack of cigarettes. He picks up the pack, his fingers trembling slightly as he looks at the label. He peers into a mirror, seeing the dullness in the eyes of this new host. Fragments of memory surface, revealing that the original Kim Ji-ryo was a heavy smoker. He crushes the cigarette pack in a fit of rage, knowing how fatal this habit is for a wizard. Smoking is a death sentence for a magic user, as it ruins the necessary mana circulation. True magic requires the perfect flow of internal mana through every vital organ in the body. When mana enters the body, the lungs act as the primary filter and conduit for the energy. Jim rubs his temples, the magnitude of his defective vessel finally hitting home. He sinks back to the floor, cursing himself for not filtering out such a damaged corpse. He looks at his hands, a spark of his old determination returning to his eyes. "There must be a way to fix this body," he mutters, refusing to give up on a second chance. He vows to live happily in this new land, no matter what obstacles stand in his way. Sometime later, he finds himself sitting across from a stern-faced officer at the precinct. The unnamed police officer sighs, questioning why someone of Jim's status would act so recklessly. Jiryo stands before a massive skyscraper in the middle of the city. It's the Awakening Test Center, the place the previous owner of this body avoided like the plague. He stares at a tattered document in his hands. The pieces of his new life are starting to fit together. The verdict is right there in black and white. Kim Jiryo is a certified F rank. A memory from the body's past starts to resurface. This guy wasn't just weak. He was at the bottom of the food chain in this world. Flashback to the police station. Jiryo bows low, thanking the officer for letting his dining and dashing slide with just a warning. The cop reaches into his vest, stopping him before he can leave. He points out that Jiryo isn't even registered with the association and asks if he's a late bloomer. He hands over a flyer for the test center, reminding him that the initial screening is totally free. As Jiryo walks off, the officer waves goodbye, sounding genuinely jealous. Jiryo just wonders what this awakening stuff even is. He stares down at the flyer with a blank expression. Since everyone keeps pestering him about it, he figures he might as well go see what the fuss is about. The building on the flyer looks exactly like the one he's standing in front of now. Back in the present, Sun Wei-yun catches up to him. She mentions that if he hadn't bolted earlier, he could have claimed hunter immunity for the mess he made. She looks at him with a composed, professional gaze. She hands him a 50,000 won bill as a partial payment and wishes him a nice day. Jiryo watches her walk away, his mind racing. He grips the cash so hard it crinkles. He just realized the total bounty for that bird was 2 million won. To his inner ruler, that bird was a worthless pest back in their home world, no better than a cockroach. But on Earth, killing that cockroach is apparently a high-paying job. His stomach does the math. 2 million won equals 75 glorious bowls of pork soup. His inner octopus is sold. It's time to start hunting for more soup money. Jiryo's face twists into a manic, greedy grin. Sun Wei-yun turns back and sees the look on his face. She's immediately on high alert. She starts looking through her pockets, deciding that she needs to get away from this creep as fast as possible. She hands him the money and confirms his identity one last time. Jirio stares at the bill, his inner ruler baffled by a culture that just hands out money for killing bugs. Sun Weiyun can't shake the image of him standing over that monster earlier. He looked so composed, like he'd been slaughtering C-rank beasts his entire life. She starts to suspect he's one of those sketchy types who hide their true rank for illegal reasons. She looms over him, her suspicion growing by the second. She forces a polite laugh and tells him those birds are just stupid, so he probably just got lucky. Jirio notes her fake smile. He realizes Earthlings use these subtle expressions to mask their feelings and figures he should learn to do it too. He stays deadpan and tells her the truth. His official rank is F. She's completely shocked. No F rank should be able to touch a monster like that. Jirio just brushes it off as pure luck. He explains that the dumb bird basically committed suicide by ramming its head into a wall repeatedly. They stand there in a heavy, awkward silence. She thinks it over. It's a bit of a stretch, but she's heard of monsters failing to adapt to the environment and offing themselves. Jirio's gaze stays sharp. A steaming, hot bowl of pork soup appears before him. He dives in like he hasn't eaten in years. His hands move on autopilot, shoveling the delicious soup in his mouth while his inner ruler cheers him on. Jirio is officially head over heels for Earth cuisine. He's having a great time, but things weren't always this smooth. Just a little while ago, he was sitting at a police station listening to a lecture about being too young to be a dine and dasher. He tried to play it cool, sweating bullets while claiming he just forgot his wallet at home. Back in the present, Sun Weiyun spots him and recognizes him from the monster attack earlier. She hands him a 50,000 won bill, explaining that it's his share of the reward for taking down that giant bird. Jirio stares at the cash, drool practically hitting the floor. He's already calculating exactly how much pork soup this can buy. By his math, this single slip of paper is worth at least 6 bowls of his new favorite food. He can't believe that dumb bird was actually worth money. He wonders if people pay extra for the feathers or something. Then she drops the bombshell. The total reward was actually 2 million won. Jirio's jaw hits the pavement. He wants to know where the rest of his cut went. Sun Weiyun just sighs, looking like she's dealt with this enough for one day. She explains that between the smashed streetlights and the broken overpass, the repair bill was astronomical. Since he wasn't registered, she had to pay for it all out of the reward money. Jirio's expression goes cold as he processes the massive tax he just paid. He takes the money anyway, while she stands there waiting for something else. She asks to see his hunter license to finalize things. Jirio doesn't even have one, so he just started walking away, claiming he's going to go grab it real quick. She watches him leave, clearly not buying his excuse for a second. She looks pretty skeptical as the weird blonde guy disappears into the crowd. Jirio knows he can't keep living like a bum. If he wants to survive here, he needs real cash. After all, he didn't escape slavery just to be broke on another planet. He's here for the good life. He starts dreaming big. In his head, he's already lounging on a golden sports car in front of a massive mansion. The goofy look on his face disappears, replaced by a look of pure, hungry ambition. He decides right then and there, he's going to become a professional hunter. It's a total 180 from this morning when his future felt like a dead end. Back then, one bowl of soup was enough to bankrupt him. But now, he's seen the potential. He stops to watch a news broadcast about the elite hunters of this world. They look like celebrities, geared up and ready for war. The screen shows the massive hunting grounds where these people make their fortunes. It's a brutal world of monsters and magic, far more dangerous than he expected. He looks at the swirling energy of a gate, a portal to another dimension. He understands a rule now. The higher the rank, the bigger the payday and the deadlier the monsters. He senses a weird mana pattern coming from a nearby gate. He wonders if there are actually monsters living inside those things. He turns his attention to a restricted area nearby. He sees the yellow police tape and thinks Earthlings have some really weird taste in decorations. He walks right past the do not cross signs toward a cave entrance, completely oblivious to why they decorate plants like this. Inside, a team of professional hunters is gearing up to head into the portal. Their leader, Yoon Sung, is already on the phone with his manager, reporting their arrival at the gate. The manager on the other end sounds paranoid, asking if they're sure no civilians are around to see them. Yoon Sung tells him to relax. They've got the entire perimeter locked down tight. Nearby, a mother and her daughter hurry away, clearly spooked by the heavy atmosphere near the cave. Jirio's stomach starts making its opinion known. He looks like he's about to faint from starvation. He clutches his stomach, calling it a full-blown nutritional crisis, while a passing kid wonders why this weird guy is acting so strange. His nose twitches as a savory scent hits him. He follows the smell and finds himself in front of a shop specializing in pork soup. A steaming, hot bowl of soup is placed before him. The owner serves him with a kind smile, and Jiryo can barely contain his excitement. He takes his first bite, finally finding some peace in this new world. After finishing his meal, Jiryo stands in the street, realizing that being a hunter is the ticket to a comfortable life on Earth. He decides that hunting monsters and living off the profit is the perfect plan, even if his magic hasn't fully returned to him yet. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out in the crowd as someone shouts that a new gate has just opened. A swirling purple portal appears in the middle of the street, surrounded by police tape and panicked onlookers. Inside the dark energy of a gate, a massive, shadowy figure looms ominously. The team manager, a man with glasses, looks on with a smug, confident expression. He explains to his team that it's a common phenomenon for gates to skip levels and become more dangerous when they start acting strange. Yoon-sung looks back at his teammates, sensing that something about this mission isn't right. He suggests they slow down and proceed with caution, but the manager just laughs off his concern. Yoon-sung's intuition is screaming at him as they venture further into the darkness without seeing a single monster. A hand reaches out to pat him on the head in a patronizing gesture. The manager teases Yoon-sung for being so nervous despite his youth and obvious talent. He reminds the team that they have nothing to fear with an A-rank hunter like Yoon-sung leading the way. Meanwhile, back on the street, Jiryo stops dead in his tracks as he senses something unusual. He watches a visible trail of mana snake through the air above the bustling crowd. He wonders if there's another gate opening nearby that the authorities have completely missed. He decides to follow the trail, certain that there's another portal hidden close by. High above the city, a second purple gate begins to pulse with energy deep in the hills. A hand brushes against the rough bark of a tree as someone moves quickly through the thick woods. Jiryo grumbles about the effort it takes to climb the steep hill, completely ignoring the yellow police tape blocking his path. Yoon-sung is on the phone, venting his frustration about the constant gate mutations and rank shifts they've been seeing. He hangs up the call, focusing all his attention on the mission at hand. Standing at the mouth of a dark cave, he finally gives his team the order to head inside. The team grumbles about the damp, gross atmosphere of the cave as they step away from the sunlight. Yoon-sung checks his readings and confirms that the mana density inside currently matches a D-rank dungeon. A massive blast of energy lights up the entire cavern. The ground shatters from the sheer force of the impact. A single purple eye glows ominously through the dust. Yoon-sung leaps forward, throwing all his weight behind his massive energy shield. The tank lets out a roar, determined to hold the line. But even for an A rank, the strain is starting to show on his face. The unnamed swordsman breathes a sigh of relief, glad to have someone so strong on their side. Yoon-sung says they'll recover their fallen teammate's body and get out of there. But the monster is already right on top of him, its purple eyes glowing with malice. He realizes too late that he's in way over his head. One brutal strike sends the tank flying backwards. He slams into the rocky wall with enough force to crack the stone. From the safety of the shadows, someone is watching the whole thing. Jim peeks over a rock, wondering what's making all the noise. He spots the source of the commotion further down the tunnel. A massive Titan Golem dominates the cavern, looking like a mountain of stone. Its rocky surface is already stained with the blood of the hunters. The party looks like tiny insects compared to the scale of this monster. Yoon-sung stands paralyzed, her eyes wide with shock. The sight of the golem has completely shattered her resolve. The beast looms over her, ready to deliver a finishing blow. Terrified, the mage can't even bring herself to move. She lets out a tiny gasp as she stares up at the giant arm. The golem doesn't hesitate, swinging its massive fist. She lets out a piercing scream as she finally snaps. Yoon-sung yells at her to stay focused and not let fear win. He spots another attack coming and warns her it's right behind her. He locks his gaze onto the monster, ready for one last desperate play. The impact is massive, sending shockwaves through the ground. He manages to catch the stone fist on his shield just in time. Gritting his teeth, he puts everything he has into holding it back. But the sheer weight of the golem is starting to crush him. Meanwhile, Jim is just casually strolling through the dungeon. He's beginning to think he might have ventured deeper than he intended. The wizard pauses as he senses a shift in the mana around him. Blue particles begin to swirl in the air, reacting to his presence. His eyes glow blue as he activates his magical vision to analyze the energy. To him, the mana in this world feels crude and entirely unrefined. He keeps walking, completely unbothered by the potential dangers ahead. Following the trail, he soon realizes that someone else is already here. He looks down into the pit and sees the Titan Golem in all its glory. And right beneath it lies the bloodied, broken form of Yoon Sung. One of the hunters lies dead in a pool of blood, hit so hard he didn't even have a chance to scream. The rest of the team is paralyzed, unable to wrap their heads around how he was killed with just one hit. A massive surge of mana erupts, blasting through the cavern like a lightning strike. Up on a ledge, Jim and his little green friend watch the disaster unfold with detached curiosity. Yoon Sung is barely standing, his teammates frozen in the background as the monster looms over them. The Titan Golem raises its glowing fist, ready to deliver another crushing blow. Blood pours down the tank's face, but he's still screaming, trying to keep the fight going. The massive stone hand comes crashing down with enough force to shatter the earth itself. Yoon Sung is sent tumbling through the air like he's made of paper. The swordsman screams for Yoon Sung to do something before they all end up dead. The golem doesn't miss a beat, its power pulsing through its massive rocky body. Another devastating hit shakes the foundations of the dungeon. A blur of motion catches Yoon Sung's eye as someone moves through the chaos. The golem looms over the wounded swordsman, raising its fist for the kill. He tries to scramble away, but the ground is already disintegrating beneath him. Suddenly, he's stunned to see his sword, and a stranger standing right in the way. The sheer weight of the monster's fury sends shockwaves throughout the entire cavern. From the side, Yoon Sung watches her friends get slaughtered, her mind completely broken by fear. Dust and energy fill the air as the team's final stand falls apart. Yoon Sung puts everything he has into one final shield block, trying to buy some time. He's gritting his teeth, his arms shaking from the impossible pressure of the golem's power. He yells at his sister to cast a binding spell right now, while he's still holding it back. The golem just stares him down, an unstoppable mountain of stone and mana. He warns her that if they don't hold this thing down, not a single one of them is making it out alive. He begs her to hurry, his voice cracking with the effort of not being crushed into paste. But the mage is gone. Her eyes are glazed over with nothing but pure, unadulterated terror. She looks at her brother one last time, her resolve finally snapping under the pressure. Then, she does the unthinkable. She turns her back on the fight and starts running for her life. The wounded swordsman yells after her, unable to believe she's actually leaving them to die. She doesn't even look back, her face twisted in a mask of desperate panic as she flees the cavern. He's left on his knees, bleeding out, and wondering why his own teammate just abandoned him. Yoon Sung stares after her in shock, the betrayal hitting harder than any physical blow ever could. The swordsman begs her not to run away, but his voice is drowned out by the monster's roar. The golem brings its massive fist down for the final, earth-shattering strike. Yoon Sung is slammed into the dirt, his shield, and his spirit, finally breaking. He lies in a pool of his own blood, the sounds of the cavern fading as he loses consciousness. As the world goes dark, he doesn't feel angry, just a cold, hollow sense of emptiness. It's the realization that the person he trusted most just left him to rot. His mind drifts back to his awakening, back when he thought being an A rank meant he was a hero. Back then, every major guild was fighting over him, and his future looked bright. He had a team he called family, and together they felt like they could conquer anything. He never could have imagined his journey would end with his own sister leaving him for dead. The Titan Golem looms over the battlefield like a dark, immovable monument of death. Yoon Sung lies motionless in the dirt, his blood staining the cold ground as his consciousness fades. The golem's massive stone face remains expressionless, its glowing eyes the only sign of the ancient power within. Its eyes pulse with a malevolent purple light as it surveys the carnage it has caused. From his vantage point, Jim sighs, unable to watch the pathetic display any longer. The monster prepares to finish off the remaining survivors, its rocky frame creaking with every movement. Jim steps out from the shadows, his expression calm and composed despite the chaos surrounding him. He looks down at the broken tank, noting that the battle has provided him with all the analysis he needs. Jim stands before the towering creature, unimpressed by its massive size and intimidating presence. He dismisses the ancient construct as an outdated model, clearly bored by the prospect of a fight. With a smug grin, Jim prepares to show the golem what a real hunter can do. The Titan Golem's massive fist slams down with enough force to level the entire cave. Jim barely gets out of the way, the wind from the strike whipping past him. The ground shatters into a million pieces where he stood just a second ago. He looks back calmly, completely unbothered by the giant stone wall coming at him. He realizes this whole gate is actually someone's private property. The golem doesn't care about trespassing laws. It just wants him dead. It looms over him, its glowing purple eyes locking onto its target. Jim turns his back to the beast, walking with a casual stroll. He reaches into his suit, feeling the weight of his physical limitations. The golem raises a fist again, blocking out the light. He summons Ruler, his small green slime, hoping his little buddy has the technical info he needs. A massive fist swings past his head, missing by a literal hair. The golem is relentless, throwing punch after punch. He stays on the move, dancing around the stone strikes with practiced ease. He leans back, dodging a horizontal swing that would have taken his head off. He's starting to sweat. This weak F-rank body is already reaching its limit. Another close call forces him into a desperate roll. The Titan Golem pulls back for an even bigger smash. The ground erupts as the stone giant pulverizes the cavern floor. Jim hits the ground hard, gasping for air as his stamina fails. He spots a glow on the golem's arm. That's the mana sensor he needs to hit. Ruler points out that this is the only opening they're going to get. He rushes forward, pushing his tired legs for one last burst of speed. That purple gem isn't decoration. It's the core of the golem's detection system. He knows he can't win a physical fight, so he goes for a technical shutdown. He finds a maintenance hatch and triggers the manual release. He pulls out a glowing blue interface tool to begin the bypass. The golem's mana circuit is exposed right in front of him. He starts working on the internal wiring with the precision of a master engineer. Sparks fly as he begins ripping out the outdated components. He holds the blue core high, trying to find the right frequency to jam the signal. He makes some final, frantic adjustments to the override device. The golem's sensors flicker as they lose track of their target. He makes a break for the golem's arm to input the final command. Usually, only the creator knows the override, but he's seen thousands of these models. He starts drawing glowing blue symbols in the air, his fingers moving in a blur. Every stroke of light is part of a manual emergency stop command. A massive magic circle pulses around him, forcing the machine to listen. The golem's eyes flash red as its internal systems start to crash. Its power drains instantly, and a massive stone construct begins to slump. Jim jumps back just as the giant freezes into a dormant heap of rock. He slumps down on a ledge, his body trembling from the pure exhaustion of moving. Jim starts walking again, his footsteps echoing through the now silent cavern. He pauses for a moment, looking back at the massive stone guardian he just put to sleep. Even with all his knowledge, taking down a model this size in such a fragile body is exhausting. He knows these giants are sluggish because of their sheer mass, making them easy to dodge if you're fast enough. But the physical strain is catching up to him. He can feel his chest tightening. He's realizing just how pathetically weak this human body actually is. The golem was relentless, every single strike meant to be a killing blow. Its purple mana sensors were locked onto him the entire time, tracking his every move. He had to risk everything to get close enough to initiate the manual shutdown. He looks down at the core he extracted, the mechanical interface still humming in his hand. It's a crude piece of tech by his standards, but it got the job done. Nearby, he spots a man lying face down in the dirt, surrounded by pools of blood. It's on Yoon Sung, the hunter who is supposed to be leading the raid on this gate. His fingers twitch against the cold stone floor as he starts to regain consciousness. In his daze, a memory of home flashes before his eyes. He remembers telling his mother that he was an A-rank awakener, full of pride. She looked at him with deep concern, knowing how dangerous the life of a hunter is. She tried to warn him about the risks, but he was too confident to listen to her fears. He clasped her hands in his, trying to reassure her with a smile. He told her not to worry, because he was finally a hunter recognized by everyone. He made a promise that he would definitely show her what success looks like. She didn't want glory. She just wanted him to trust her and stay safe. He turned away, heading off to his work with a wave and a grin. At that moment, he truly believed he was invincible. His mother's final words were for him to be careful while he was working. Now, he's battered and broken, his face covered in blood and grime. His hands shake as he tries to find the strength to push himself up. Every breath is a struggle, his body shattered from the golem's brutal attack. He slowly lifts his head, his vision swimming as he tries to focus. He sees a figure standing over the defeated golem, a man in a suit, completely unscathed. Yoon Sung stares in disbelief at the pile of rubble that used to be an A-rank guardian. These machines are legendary for being nearly indestructible. They're essentially massive clay dolls brought to life by high-density mana. Back in Alpha Yuri, these golems were used for everything from simple everyday tasks to manual labor, running errands, and complex construction projects. They were the very foundation of the society's entire infrastructure. But their most terrifying role was always as unstoppable weapons of war on the battlefield. Alpha Yuri was truly a nation built entirely on the labor of these stone giants. Seeing Jim holding the golem's core, Yoon Sung is convinced he took the beast down barehanded. He can't wrap his head around how this guy even got past the security perimeter. To him, Jim looks like a legendary high-level hunter, someone far above his own rank. As Jim starts to walk away, the interface tool rolls across the floor with a hollow sound. He hears the sound of footsteps and panics, thinking another monster is coming for him. Yoon Sung grinds his teeth in frustration, his body battered and his pride wounded. He tries to push himself off the ground, but his limbs feel like lead. He still can't move properly. Blood continues to trickle down his forehead as he looks up, his eyes wide with shock. He sees Jim standing right in front of him, looking calm despite the chaos of the dungeon. Jim calls out to him with a simple "hey," snapping the injured hunter out of his trance. With a neutral expression, Jim reaches out a hand to the fallen man, offering him a way up. A massive glass skyscraper towers over the city, reflecting the bright morning sun. This is where the big players in the hunter world pull the strings. Jim scrolls through a news article on a smartphone. The headline is all about Yoon Sung surviving a dimensional gate, and Jim can't believe how fast they churn these stories out. Inside a sterile office, Yoon Sung is getting grilled by his boss. He's covered in bandages with his arm in a sling while the chief leans over a tablet, skeptical of every word he says. The chief stares him down, his glasses catching the light. He isn't buying the story about some mysterious savior and wants to know why it isn't in the official report. Yoon Sung is visibly sweating under the pressure. The chief doesn't get how a random nobody could take down an A-rank monster, especially when Yoon Sung claims he doesn't even know the guy's name. Flashback to a training session. Jim holds a handheld pixelglass analyzer. He's looking at it with a serious face, testing out Earth's technology. The device screen flickers with an error message, unable to retrieve data. It can't even pick up a reading from him. Squatting in the middle of the forest, Jim is genuinely baffled. This thing is supposed to classify useful resources, so why is it drawing a blank on his own signature? His eyes go wide as it hits him. If the device can't see him, it means his magic is on a completely different level than anything Earth has built. He stands up, looking a bit more confident. This primitive tech might actually be his best cover in this world. Later, Jim is out in the field with other trainees. He keeps his head down while a staff member in a headset watches the group, wondering if Jim is from another region. Jim breaks a sweat, hoping his blonde nobody act is holding up. Even his slime spirit looks nervous, mimicking his worried expression. He looks back down at the scanner, trying to figure out the limits of this world's magical science. A staff member holds up a vibrant purple butterfly, telling the group to test their lenses on a real target. Jim points his device at the butterfly fluttering above, still acting like a total amateur. The screen pings, identifying it as a rank F poison butterfly. It's basic, but at least the scanner works on normal monsters. Jim stares at the results, realizing the device only cares about magic power and ignores everything else. The staff member laughs, clearly enjoying the simple lesson, while Jim realizes how narrow-minded this technology really is. He walks over to a bush filled with bright red berries to continue his experimentation. The staffer suddenly shouts through his headset, warning him not to provoke anything. Jim just notes that the scanner ignores humans completely. He scans the red fruit, and the screen confirms they're cluster berries. It's just more basic data for a world that only sees the surface. He grabs a handful of dirt and rocks, concluding that the scanner only flags things based on magic, ignoring anything neutral. He imagines a pile of literal jewels. Even if they're valuable, the device would call them trash if they don't have a man's signature. It's convenient, but pretty dumb. Looking at the mud on his hand, he knows better. There are plenty of legendary materials that don't have a drop of magic in them. He clenches his fist. Earthlings might have cool gadgets, but their understanding of magic is basically at the toddler stage. Back in the present, Yoon Sung looks dejected. He's stuck between telling the truth and protecting the man who saved him. The chief isn't backing down, though. He tells Yoon Sung that looking weak is a death sentence in the hunter industry. Yoon Sung stays quiet, his head bowed. He knows the game. Save face or lose everything. The chief adjusts his glasses with a sigh. He's more worried about public image than the actual truth of what happened in that gate. Yoon Sung finally stands up, looking determined to stick to his story, even if his boss doesn't like it. The door shuts, leaving the chief alone in the room. The pressure is on to keep this mystery hunter a secret. Meanwhile, Jim is living his best life at home. He's lying on his back, munching on snacks while scrolling through his phone. He's deep diving into articles about gate entry and mandatory hunter IDs. He knows he needs to blend in better. He eventually shows up at new gate briefing. A female staff member is wrapping up the safety lecture for the group. Jim stands in the back, letting out a massive yawn. The don't show off rule is pretty redundant for a guy pretending to be an F rank. A staff member hands him a scanner. Jim takes it with a blank stare, acting like he's never seen one before. He looks at the device, playing dumb. He asks what it is, really leaning into the clueless newbie role. Back to his late-night research, he's looking at gate management blogs. There's even a weird chicken mascot for one of the associations. He's totally obsessed with this glass slab. To him, the fact that humans can access a global network with a finger is basically god-tier technology. He reads up on the privatization of gates. Turns out, it's almost impossible for individuals to own them unless they're massive guilds. A diagram on the screen breaks down the rank system from S to F. Each gate has its own set of rules and restrictions based on these tiers. Outside, guards are talking about how strict Korea is with awakened people. Jim listens in, realizing he's in a world with a lot of rules but very little history. The official seal of the Korean Hunter Association, or Hanhyup, sits front and center. They're the ones calling all the shots in this world. In their promotional stuff, Yoon Sung looks like a total champion. Jim's just sitting there on his phone, wondering how a kid like this is supposedly A-class. Back in the office, the chief leans back, brooding over the fact that Yoon Sung's elite team couldn't even handle the golem. He stares through his glasses, clearly frustrated. To him, the news that an A-ranker needed a bailout is a PR disaster waiting to happen. Meanwhile, Jim is back in his room, hunched over his phone. He's completely absorbed in whatever he's reading. He looks like he's seeing a ghost. Even the slime spirit is peeking over his shoulder, glowing with excitement at the screen. He's staring at a picture of himself on the screen, totally confused by what people are saying about him. The comments are brutal. People are calling him a nobody and making fun of his triangular eyes. The internet doesn't hold back. In the meeting room, Yoon Sung slams the table, insisting that the monster was the real story, not whoever saved him. The chief isn't moved. He tells Yoon Sung that if the public thinks he's weak, his career is basically over. He leans in, stone cold serious. In this industry, looking like you need help is the biggest sin you can commit. Yoon Sung can only sit there in silence while his boss tells him he should have just taken credit for the kill himself. Back in the present, Jim clenches his fist as he processes the gap between this world's hype and its reality. He's back out in the woods with his slime, picking up a handful of dirt. He realizes that this soil absorbs mana, something no one on Earth has even noticed. He covers his mouth, barely able to contain himself. It finally clicks for him. In his mind, he sees a bunch of cavemen. He spent all this time worrying about these people, only to realize he's basically among primitives. Now it makes sense why everything here is electric. They don't have real magic tech, because they don't even understand the basics. He wipes a bit of sweat from his face. It's wild to him that they've mastered high-end electronics, while their magical science is stuck in the Stone Age. He looks at the advanced analyzer in his hand. To him, this thing is a joke. The screen is a simple grid, lacking any of the sophisticated enchantments he's used to. He squats down in the dirt, feeling like a genius in a room full of toddlers. He runs his fingers through the soil again, feeling the raw mana-absorbing potential that everyone else is just walking over. This stuff is a rare, high-value material back home, and here it's just dirt. He looks around at the other hunters nearby. None of them have a clue. They're standing on a gold mine, and they can't even see it. If Earth had even a shred of decent magical science, this place would be a restricted research zone. He rubs his chin, genuinely baffled. How could they be so advanced in one area and so behind in another? His eyes sharpen. He needs to know exactly how long they've been at this. He walks up to the staff member with a headset and plays it cool, asking for a quick bit of history. He asks when the first awakened individuals actually showed up in Korea. The staff member doesn't even hesitate. He tells Jim it all started just 7 years ago. He explains how the dungeon shock hit, and people everywhere started developing powers at the exact same time. Even the slime spirit looks like it's about to have a heart attack. 7 years? That's it. Jim watches the mental calendar fly away. 7 years is nothing. It's a blink of an eye. To think that this entire global system, the hunters, the gates, it's all brand new. He's stunned. His homeworld, Alpha Centauri, has over 60,000 years of magical history. He isn't just a hunter. He's a master of an ancient craft in a world that's barely started to crawl.